Welcome back to a rainy edition of WD.
FM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. We're your hosts, Bree Bertolacini, Marketing Manager.
And Chris Mullen, Senior Marketing and Communications Coordinator at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Well, Chris, I am glad to be back with you. I hope you are staying dry out there. And a little note to our audience, just kind of a quick update. Apologies for the delay with our main episode of the month, but we will be back on schedule this month with an upcoming closer look at the 1941 classic, Dumbo. So stay tuned. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I just took a trip to Disneyland this past weekend. It was very stormy. There was some snow on the mountains.
The Matterhorn included?
Well, the Matterhorn's always a little snowy. But funny enough, you don't really feel it when you're on it. You do feel it in your lower back, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, the snowstorms in LA County just very perfectly changed our driving route just as we needed it on the way down and on the way back. But because of the storms, when we went to the park on Saturday, there were practically no people there in the morning. So we were able to walk on to a lot of attractions, including the brand new Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which was so much fun. I had already ridden it in Florida at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and the attraction itself is very similar, but the queue line experience is different because instead of walking through Grauman's Chinese Theater, you're walking through the El Capitan Theater, which is very cute. Inside has all of these Disney movie posters, but swapped in with Disney characters using a lot of puns, which, as we know, I'm a big fan of. So all in all, just a really great experience. The only downside was Indiana Jones Adventure was down for refurbishment. So was not able to partake in one of my very favorites. But as my parents used to say, you have to save something for next time.
Exactly. That sounds like such a magical trip at Disneyland. I always love going in the rain. It makes all of the magical attractions and the experience just a little bit better. Okay, it's going to be rain. But we get to have this fun time elsewhere. So, well, always a magical visit. If you haven't already heard kind of on that same topic of the Disneyland Resort, one of our very special objects is on a short vacation as well to Disneyland. In honor of Disney's 100th anniversary, the Walt Disney Family Museum has generously loaned Walt Disney's Special Academy Award for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs to the Disneyland Resort. So you can see the special Oscar on view at Carthay Circle Restaurant in Disney California Adventure Park now through March 22nd.
And that's really special, too, because we've never loaned the Snow White Oscar to Disney before. So if maybe you're in Southern California and don't quite have the same opportunities to come up to see us here in San Francisco, it will be at the Disneyland Resort for a short period of time. So that'll be really cool to check that out. A little bit more on the Snow White Oscar. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937 at the original Carthay Circle Theater. So it'll be really cool for people to see the Oscar in the restaurant inspired by its original premiere venue. Upon its release, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had both the critical acclaim and box office success of a film worthy of the Oscars nomination conversation. It became the highest grossing film of all time until it was dethroned by Gone with the Wind. As the first feature-length animated film from a Hollywood studio, Snow White was difficult to compare to every other potential Best Picture nominee, and thus was kept out of the Best Picture conversation altogether, but was given this very special honorary Oscar for its historic achievement.
Fun fact, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is the only film to have been honored by the Academy in 2 successive years. The first honor came in 1938 when it was nominated for Best Music. And in 1939, the Academy presented Walt with the Special Academy Award, consisting of 1 full-size Oscar and 7 miniature Oscar statuettes to follow. The Academy honored Snow White as, quote, a significant screen innovation which has charmed millions and pioneered a great new entertainment field for the motion picture cartoon.
In March, we are celebrating International Women's Day to honor women's achievements and highlight the continued struggle for gender equality. Join us for a special month-long screening of Brave, the story of a young woman's struggle to carve her own path in life without severing the bonds of family and tradition. Learn more about our film screenings and how to reserve your tickets by visiting our website at waltdisney.org/calendar.
I love Brave, and I'm just so excited. We are featuring it in our theater this month. In honor of International Women's Day, Chris, who is your favorite female Disney character on or off the screen?
My favorite female Disney character of all time is Maleficent. She steals every scene in Sleeping Beauty. She was evil because she wanted to be, she knew it, and she was really good at it. To come up with her iconic design, legendary animator Mark Davis recalled searching through material he had collected, including a book of Czechoslovakian religious paintings. He was inspired by a figure with red and black drapery that looked like flames when there was movement. He took the idea of a collar resembling a bat and horns that looked like the devil. The bottom of her dress flared like coiled snakes, and her presence was large and dominant enough to frighten everyone who gazed into her yellow eyes. From Mindy Johnson's book, Ink and Paint, The Women of Walt Disney's Animation, Jane Fowler, who started as an inker in 1943, quickly moved into character animation during the war. She worked as an assistant animator at the studio through the late 1950s, including a tenure assisting on Maleficent, in addition to performing additional live-action reference work for the character. The evil fairy herself was voiced by Eleanor Audley, who also provided additional model reference. Audley's performance also provided inspiration for Mark Davis in shaping this misunderstood villain. And if her fairy form wasn't scary enough, she also became a fire-breathing dragon at the end of the film. There's a reason she's the climactic end villain in Fantasmic. Just saying.
Well, Chris, that was an amazing pick. I love Maleficent, and just kind of the history behind her animation is always so cool to hear. The female Disney character that I most identify with, I do channel a lot of Belle vibes. Not only was she like a really early brunette Disney princess that I really identified with, but she also loves a good book. So that's definitely in line with what I enjoy. So she's confident. She knows not to judge a book by its cover. And so she's always been one of my favorites.
And you're always looking for adventure in the great wide somewhere. So perfect fit.
Exactly. Well, since this year we are celebrating Disney's 100th anniversary, I also wanted to celebrate a lesser known important woman in Disney history. On October 16th, 1923, the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio officially began. As we know, it's what we are celebrating this year. After securing their lead actress, Virginia Davis, they hired their very first employee, 23-year-old Kathleen G. Dollard. So Dollard was recommended to Walt and Roy for the job from Hazel Sewell, and she was hired to blacken cells. The blackener's job was to trace and darken the penciled lines of each drawing with ink onto the celluloid. Roy would then photograph the completed cells. It would be Kathleen Dollard who recommended Hazel Sewell's sister, Lillian Bounds, to work with the Disney Brothers. Lillian began a courtship with the boss, and, well, as they say, the rest is history.
What a great connection. A great story. Kathleen Dollard's contributions to Disney can never be overstated. Another important holiday this month is St. Patrick's Day. As the podcast's token Irishman, I wanted to highlight some of Walt's treasured Irish heritage. Walt's great-grandfather, Arundel Elias Disney, emigrated from County Kilkenny, Ireland, to North America with his family in 1834. Among his 16 children, 16, Arundel's son, Keppel, married another Irish-born immigrant, Mary Richardson. The couple's eldest son, Elias, was Walt Disney's father. Walt was an American through and through, but he always had a fondness for the stories of Ireland and its people. The Disney family made a visit to Ireland in the summer of 1951, visiting the Blarney Stone in Cork and the Rock of Cashel in County Tipperary, also known as Cashel of the Kings or St. Patrick's Rock.
Very fitting. In 1959, Disney released Darby O'Gill and the Little People. How could we forget? It's notable for being one of Sean Connery's earliest leading roles. Walt visited Ireland during filming and later attended the Dublin premiere with his wife Lillian. He wrote to his sister Ruth, quote, "The Irishers presented me with a pony, which they shipped over here. The little fellow, who incidentally was named Darby O'Gill, is being broken and fattened up and will eventually make a marvelous pony for the grandchildren," end quote. Now, I would love to know more about this Darby O'Gill, the Disney family pony.
Yeah, where are all the stories on Darby? I've never seen any more stories about this pony, but I am all in on hearing more if we could find some. And just what a great connection. In sadder news, Walt Disney's The Jungle Book, Making a Masterpiece, closes this week on Sunday, March 5th, 2023. We hope you had a chance to see this beautiful exhibition or can make it out this weekend to see it before it leaves the jungle forever. We may forget about our worries and our strife, but we'll not soon forget how fun this exhibition was to put on.
Well said, Chris. Well, Chris Miller, Kaleidoscope, and Spirit of the Season, a community art exhibition, are also closing this month. These free exhibitions are available to view in our lower lobby galleries and will close on Sunday, March 19th, 2023. Stay tuned for upcoming announcements for our upcoming exhibitions. More details are coming soon.
Join us on March 11th in our theater for an in-person talk with author and Disney expert Marcy Carricker-Smothers as she shares insights from her latest book, National Geographic's 100 Disney Adventures of a Lifetime, Magical Experiences from Around the World. Get your tickets now by visiting our calendar at waltdisney.org/calendar.
More of our Studio Series animation workshops have been announced through March and April. These workshops are 90-minute sessions that explore animation principles and techniques. Classes are available for some workshops in person and virtually, and there are separate classes for both adult and youth. In celebration of the Walt Disney Company's 100th anniversary, these workshops are turning back the clock to earlier animation techniques and innovations used in the Silly Symphonies. The classes available are Rubber Hose Animation, Animate a Duckling, Animate a Bunny Hopping, and Animate a Wolf. So that should be such a fun time.
Absolutely. And our workshops sell really quickly. So definitely check out those as soon as you can if you're interested. And now it is time for our Collections Clash. Let's recap last month's Clash where the theme was love. My reign of terror has officially ended. I did lose this Collections Clash. Bree was a very worthy adversary. Yes, please feel free to gloat. Enjoy it. Savor it. Appreciate it. We learned a lot of interesting things about what the people chose this month. So let's round up what those results were. So the first round was between your pick of the earliest known drawing of Mickey and Minnie Mouse and my pick of Diane and Sharon's wedding photos. Unsurprisingly, the people love Mickey and Minnie. My pick received 23% of the votes, and your pick won the round with 77% of the votes. I'll just say I appreciate that I was representing the family of the Walt Disney Family Museum, and you were on a cartoon. So I'm here in the real life, you're in animation.
It's a tough thing to balance at the Walt Disney Family Museum. That's why our galleries, they always feature a little family segment in each of the galleries. They always have that good tie, but you know what the people want, which is, Mickey Mouse, more Mickey. Well, for the second round, it was between your pick of Lillian and Walt's Tempest Fugit Invitation and my pick of the Lily Bell Train. The Tempest Fugit Invitation. Sorry, I'm like smiling a little too much. Hold on. The Tempest Fugit Invitation received 19% of the votes, and the Lily Bell dominated this round with 81% of the votes. You just can't go up against a train, Chris. I mean, I learned this back a couple months ago with our Disneyland model. Don't bet on the train, or don't bet against the trains.
Yeah, we're all train people at heart, just like Walt said. Now, I just want everybody to visualize in their mind what it would be like to ride the Mark Twain riverboat, sipping a mint julep with Walt Disney before the park opened. If that is not a strong enough vision in your mind, I don't know. I can't help you. But the Lily Bell is a great train. I will, and it's a great representation of love. So I can't fault anybody for that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can really just like envision riding the Lily Bell train in Walt Disney's backyard and going through, the beautiful gardens that Lillian helped cultivate. Oh, man. Wow. Both wonderful picks.
Yes. And then for the final round is between your pick of the It's a Small World case, celebrating the love of Mark and Alice Davis, and my pick of the Epcot napkin, representing the love between Roy and his brother Walt. Your pick received 44% of the votes, and my pick won the round with 56% of the votes.
Well, good. I'm glad it wasn't a total sweep. So, but I still got my first win. So I'm really excited.
Yes. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. I'm excited to get into this month's Clash. So in honor of the 60th anniversary of The Miracle of the White Stallion. I know we were all thinking it. This month's theme is horses. We have a lot of horse enthusiasts on staff, so this is just a little tribute to them.
A little bit about the film, since it is one of Disney's lesser-known live-action films. The Miracle of the White Stallions is based on the true story about how Colonel Alois Panhadski, director of Vienna's world-famous Spanish riding school, saves the school and its beautiful Lipizan white horses during World War II. The film was released on March 29th, 1963.
The film was based on the book The Dancing White Horses of Vienna by Colonel Panhadski. In our collection, we have a book he gifted and inscribed for Walt Disney, writing, quote, "To Mr. Walt Disney, in admiration to the wonderful work of the great lover of horses in animation."
The film also features the song Just Say Auf Wiedersehen by legendary songwriters Richard and Robert Sherman. Without further ado, let's kick off our collections clash. We have 3 rounds and 3 picks picked in a snake-style draft. So, Bree, since you won last month's clash, you go first.
All right. For my first pick, I'm going with Walt's saddle, located near the Griffith Park bench on our way to the Disneyland model. According to Walt's daughter and museum co-founder, Diane Disney Miller, Walt was a member of Los Rancheros Visitadores, a group founded in the early 1930s where every May the members would meet on the ranch land in Santa Barbara, California. Walt attended for many years, and the group would receive a blessing from the Santa Ynez Mission and embark on a 60-mile horse ride north. This mirrored the trek of cattle ranchers in the mid-19th century who would meet and join together to drive their cattle to market. According to Diane, quote, "He enjoyed the ride and the camaraderie. During one of those rides, the saddle was won by him through the purchase of a $2 raffle ticket. This beautiful detailed saddle was made by the Stock Saddle Company in San Francisco." Cool tie, San Francisco. Walt actually never used this particular saddle, but he did have it used later for close-up scenes of Zorro's horse, Tornado. So the saddle is an ornate leather saddle with etched silver trimming throughout, and our conservators have to shine up the silver trim pretty frequently.
I appreciated the story about the trek of cattle ranchers. I just caught up on Yellowstone, so I can just see it in my mind. All right, my first pick is King Arthur Carousel on the model. I'm trying to go for a quick win here, and with Mickey and trains and Disneyland is where I'm going. Walt had one specific theme in mind for his carousel attraction at Disneyland. He wanted it to be made up solely of galloping horses so that every rider could experience charging as part of the legendary Knights of the Round Table. And this is significant because King Arthur Carousel opened at Disneyland in 1955, but Sword in the Stone, the animated film, wouldn't be released until 1963. So the attraction is not based on the movie, it's based on the King Arthur tale. So he wanted the Knights of the Round Table to be an experience independent of any animated adaptation that would be coming down the way. As the original carousel comprised a real menagerie, giraffes, lions, and deer, as well as noble steeds, he ordered for the non-equine animals to supplement the nearby Casey Jr. circus train. Next on the list was sourcing the horses now required to fill the carousel. Walt and his team added new horses from several different carousels around the country, including one from Coney Island, New York. During a behind-the-scenes look at Disneyland, Walt later described the effort required in order for each horse to be obtained. Quote, "After many months of searching, we finally rounded up enough of the antique hand-carved type to fill our carousel and run 4 abreast." End quote, he explained. He enjoyed seeing the different expression each horse wore. Quote, "Being forced to obtain them from several sources, we've happily discovered they all have different faces. Each is a distinct individual," end quote. Rumor had it that Jingles, the carousel's lead horse, was a favorite of Lillian Disney's.
Well, it's such a great pick, and Jingles is just such an ornate, the most ornate horse on the carousel. And I know I've run and sprinted to get Jingles numerous times, only to be beat out by some little girl who wants to ride the pretty pony.
They don't even know the significance.
I know. Don't
children.
They know?
That park is for us, the people who understand. Well, since it's round 2 and we're doing the snake style, that means that I get to pick again. So my second pick is the Walt's Polo section in our galleries. Polo being the sport that you ride on a horse with a mallet. Though always active as a young adult, Walt didn't really begin to participate in sports on a regular basis until the early 1930s when a doctor recommended that he exercise to relieve stress. Walt played polo and even started a successful studio team called the Donald Ducks, as one does, until he suffered a neck injury that turned him towards other activities like skiing. You're welcome for a Walt skis reference. Walt's interest in polo also led to a Mickey Mouse short film called Mickey's Polo Team in 1936, in which Disney characters faced off against Hollywood stars of the day, riding horses that resembled their riders. An injury that Walt suffered playing polo led to chronic pain he would manage through the rest of his life. His mid-1960s visit to a hospital to get his old polo injury re-examined led to the discovery of cancer that would cut his life tragically short.
Well, this is a really great pick, Chris. I'm really glad that you chose polo and just kind of that section in our galleries. I feel like that particular gallery is where you learn about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and you sometimes it's quick to miss. So kind of highlighting that area is really special, and kind of that particular point in Walt's life, who he was just really had a good extracurricular, good activities that he was doing, and wasn't, when the height of how busy he was in the studio, that he was making time for a good personal life. And that also included on the Donald Ducks, people from the studio playing on his team. So I know Roy actually played with him too. So that's a really great pick. Well, my second pick is the large painting of the centaurs bathing in the water by Roy Forcum for the Fantasia segment, The Pastoral Symphony, we have on display. Now, a centaur is half human, half horse, so that counts.
That's fair. Go ahead. Tell us about it.
Well, I chose this beautiful artwork to showcase the more mythical aspect of this month's theme of horses. Centaurs help to represent the close relationship between people and horses that has often existed throughout history. The mythical creature of centaurs has been traced back to the second millennium, and Walt Disney and his team created a segment that followed the centaur's day while on Mount Olympus. Now, to give it a quick description of this artwork, it is a concept painting that spans almost 50 inches wide and 14 inches high. So it is a very big artwork. Looking up closely, you can see the pool with centaur and centaurettes bathing together. In the foreground, there are exotic birds and elaborate detailed trees. And in the background, you can see more of Mount Olympus. Our conservator, Martine Salazar, discovered upon inspection of this artwork that this is an oil painting over photograph. This shows us part of the creative process Forcum used to achieve this beautiful artwork. Now, concept paintings were used to convey a visual representation of an idea for a scene. Now, this artwork was most likely used in the process of selecting a color palette to produce the Pastoral Symphony. So according to our collections team, the shape of the board and numerous marginal notations are evidence that the painting was likely used in the multiplane camera to film and test some of the opening scenes for the sequence.
Roy Forcum, I hardly know him. No, that's a great pick. And I was just so stuck on horses that I didn't even think of their mythical siblings, centaurs. So that's a great pick on your part.
Anything with hooves counts.
Yes, hooves counts. Yes. So tell us what's your last pick?
All right, for the last round, my final pick is the USC Trojaneers membership card on display in our awards gallery. You might be thinking, what is going on here? Well, how does this tie into horses? Well, all right, it takes some explaining to do. In 1934, a group of USC students formed the first University of Southern California Polo Club. Their very first match was against Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse team, and USC triumphed in this game 7-6. According to the January 22nd, 1934 edition of the Southern California Daily Trojan, quote, Walt Disney was easily the best player on his own team, being continually the center of the battle and very often emerging from the milling ponies and riders with the ball on its way to a score. Disney fell from his horse twice during the game, time being called the second time, while his horse was retrieved from a nearby field after running away. Walt would score 4 of the 6 points. And I just love actually hearing how Walt Disney played and was like how his game style was, and to kind of hear that he was a pretty good polo player, I think is just really fascinating. So Walt, who never went to college but received an honorary doctorate from USC, was a founding member of the Trojaneers Booster Club in 1934. Its second vice president in 1937 and president in 1939. Now, in 1937, the Southern California Alumni Review noted that, quote, he has not missed a Trojan game in many years, end quote. So in 1938, he was awarded the University of Southern California Life Member Award. Now, Walt later explained what the Trojaneers were. It's composed of men who didn't go to college, who give jobs to those who did, athletes particularly. The Trojaneers come from a suggestion that Trojan season ticket holders should organize to meet with the team and coaches and become better acquainted with the university. So this pick is definitely highlighting Walt's relationship with the USC Trojans, Trojan horses. There's kind of a tie there. But also that he attended all of the polo games for the USC Trojans. So, and that kind of ties in there. So Walt's connection with USC wouldn't end here. His eldest daughter, Diane, attended USC, where she would meet her husband, football player Ron Miller. And I'll say it again, the rest is history.
Wow, what a great story. And really the most positive connotation of Trojan horse, I think, that I can think of. Yeah, and it's, like you said, it's interesting to think of Walt being a good polo player because he was never profiled as being particularly sporty throughout his whole life. He always drew, and he was an actor in his young days, a performer on stage, a showman, but you never quite got this athletic ability sense from him. And then he becomes this great polo player in his adult life. So an interesting little wrinkle that you don't really know about the man until you go through our galleries and see pictures of him riding a horse with a silly helmet on his head.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that, hearing more about Walt Disney's other like activities is just really interesting. And that was something really cool that I found while kind of researching this very particular topic. It's so obscure because it's like such an obscure object in our awards gallery amongst like a ton of amazing awards. And so I was just kind of going through USC's archives to kind of find some of these cool things to look at. But so it's very fascinating.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think, seeing the Trojaneer membership card, that would have anything to do with horses, but I think you pledged your case very well, and now it'll be up to our listeners to decide.
Well, Chris, what's your final pick?
All right, well, my final pick is the Main Street USA poster on display by the Wall of Televisions in Gallery 9. There are horses in it, so it counts. I've always loved the artistry of Disney Parks attraction posters over the years. Of course, just this past weekend, walked underneath the Main Street train station and saw all the current attraction posters on display. They really kind of show a preview of the stories being told throughout the park, and this poster of Main Street USA that we have on display is no different. And it's also, in particular, a reminder of how horses have always been a part of the fabric of Disneyland from the very beginning. D23 has a really great quote on this connection. Quote, "The majestic Belgian horses pulling the streetcars are the last remaining horses utilized daily in the park, and they greatly add to the atmosphere of a turn-of-the-century street." And I totally agree.
Yeah, I love that. And I find that it's so interesting that we still have the horses pulling the streetcars at Disneyland. And I love that semblance of that kind of turn of the century feel and having that environment of having the horses present there. And we talked about it, I think, last Collections Clash about Owen Pope and how him and his wife lived at Disneyland to take care of these horses. And there's still horses still at Disneyland today. So I think that's so magical.
Absolutely.
Wow, those were great picks. So it's my favorite part of the episode, other than, going head to head. I just love doing some honorable mentions. We get some wacky picks here. So these will not be up for voting. So my first pick is not a wacky pick. This one is a legitimate pick. It's the Mary Blair Cinderella concept art. In our galleries, we do feature Mary Blair a lot. So I figured I have to put it in an honorable mention, but I just didn't want to pick her again. I don't want her to become too overexposed. Well, in our galleries, we have two dueling concept paintings that feature graphic stylized horses from Mary Blair. The first is the horses being dispatched from the castle in search for Cinderella. The second one is of Cinderella's carriage being pulled by the horses trying to get away before midnight when the horses turn back into mice. For Cinderella, Blair is credited with color and styling. In her work for the film, she established a romantic, whimsical sensibility using a soft, dreamy color palette and gentle, sweeping shades. This ambiance was carried over into the final film by the hands of animators, layout artists, and background artists. In the castle artwork depicting the horses running away, they are painted only with one color, helping to highlight the moonlight and stark shadows that would create that environment. The horses pulling the carriage are more detailed, but in the Mary Blair style, less is more.
That is a great pick. And I agree that we turn to Mary Blair a lot because she does a lot of really great stuff over the timeline of the galleries. So it's easy just to find a Mary Blair connection and everything, but a good horse connection there. My first honorable mention is the story of Rupert the Stallion that we have featured in our first gallery. Rupert belonged to a family friend, Doc Sherwood, who paid young Walt a nickel for a drawing of his horse. Walt had a difficult time with it, as Rupert wouldn't quite stand still for the picture, but it paid off, literally, as this was the first time Walt Disney was paid for his art. It's really the first thing that came to mind when I thought of horse stories in the galleries, but it doesn't translate to an actual object because this is Collections Clash. We're clashing with objects in our collection. This is just a story that we show on a screen, but I felt like Rupert the Stallion had to be represented some way.
I love it. And I do love how it is presented in our galleries, having Walt Disney tell the story and the beautiful reshowing of Rupert kind of flip-flopping and Doc Sherwood. So great pick. For my last honorable mention, it is one you might have to use a magnifying glass to be able to spot the horses. I'm going for miniature horse mugs we have on display, along with many of Walt's other collected miniatures. On display is a small curio cabinet with 25 mugs with hand-painted images on each. There are quite a few of them that feature horses pulling a variety of carriages, so I thought that was a cute little tie-in. One of the mugs that's my favorite that doesn't feature a horse, but does a great job of illustrating who this particular collector was, is the mug with the initials WD on them, so short for Walt Disney. I love it.
Well, I knew that if there was any way to make a connection with miniatures, then you would make it. So I'm glad that you found an example of our miniatures with horses.
I scoured all the miniatures. I'm like, we got to find something small. I know there's something small. In this conversation, I think what's been interesting is kind of just highlighting that Walt Disney was a horse guy. He really had a lot of experiences with horses. I don't think we mentioned this, but his home in Los Feliz in California, he would often get horses in the morning, and him and Lillian would ride through Griffith Park. You think of Griffith Park with the carousel and what a fun family environment, but a good portion of Griffith Park is hills and people go on hikes and you can go on rides out there. So I love that. And we do have a lot of photos in our galleries that we couldn't highlight here because, it's harder to highlight just images for our Collections Clash. But, of taking his daughters on horse rides in Palm Springs in different areas of California. So I just love how horses really were a core part of one of Walt's loves.
Walt Disney, train guy and horse guy.
Yeah.
For my last honorable mention, I'm going with the Frontierland stagecoaches and mule pack featured on our model. Perhaps one of the most standout examples of the changes in Disneyland since Walt's time that we have on the model. The Rainbow Caverns Mine Train and later the Mine Train through Nature's Wonderland chugged along before Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was conceptualized. Rideable mules and stagecoaches through the greater Frontierland area added not only kinetic energy, but an authentic, immersive frontier experience.
I love that. And I still find it so fascinating that you were able to ride mules and kind of have that experience. And probably some of people's early experiences with horses, mules, ponies. I mean, I've heard some kind of horror stories of people riding the mules and them being a little more ornery. So, what a liability. But I think that's such a great pick.
And that brings us to the end of this month's Collections Clash. Visit our Instagram stories today, Wednesday, March 1st, to vote on your favorite objects, or email us at podcast@wdfmuseum.org to cast your votes.
Thanks for tuning in to WDFM. the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at WDF Museum for all the latest updates.
From both of us, saddle up and keep moving forward.
Bye.
Bye.